Hi everyone, welcome back to Module 9 of our 7th to 8th grade video series. Today we're going to be breaking down parts of speech, which are essentially the basic roles that words play in a sentence. And once you really understand parts of speech, then reading and writing can get a lot easier because you'll know what each word is doing. Before we begin, make sure to follow along with our 7th to 8th grade video series worksheet, which is linked on our website. And on that worksheet, there are follow along notes for this as well as practice prompts there as well. So when we talk about grammar, we often hear parts of speech. And parts of speech are basically categories that describe what role a word plays in a sentence. There isn't a complete agreement among grammarians on the exact number of or names of the parts of speech, but most lists typically include nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, articles, and interjections. So one of the most important things to understand about language is that the same word can belong to different parts of speech depending on how it's used. So the meaning is not fixed or absolute. Instead, it's contingent on use or how the word behaves in a sentence. So for example, if you think about the word walk, and if you say, I went for a walk, then in that sentence, walk is functioning as a noun. But if you say, I will walk home, then there walk is functioning as a verb. So to identify a word's part of speech, you really have to look at how it's being used in the sentence and not just the word itself. So our first part of speech that we're going to dive into is a noun. So a noun basically names a person, place, thing, or idea. So some examples of nouns include queen, England, body, love, philosophy, stars, children, car ride, concept, wealth, and Australia. So as Queen Elizabeth I famously said, I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king. And in this sentence, body is a noun, so it's woman, heart, stomach, king in England. And then another example is a quote by Francis Bacon, which says, knowledge is power. And in that sentence, both knowledge and power are nouns because they're things, right, or concepts. And in both cases, nouns name ideas and identities, not just physical objects. The second part of speech is a pronoun. So a pronoun takes the place of a noun. Some examples are I, me, you, she, him, it, they, who, which, this, those, someone, mine, ourselves. And one example of this is I am myself the matter of my book. And in that sentence, I, myself, and my are pronouns, right? They rename the subject. And then in the other example, you are king by your own fireside, as much as any monarch in his throne. So in this sentence, you, your, and his are pronouns because, again, they rename the noun. And pronouns really help us avoid repetition and follow the sentence's flow more naturally. You don't want to keep on saying, like, for example, let's say your subject is Joe. You can't say every sentence, Joe's doing this, Joe's doing this, Joe's doing this. You say Joe's doing this, he, blah, 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 right? So it avoids repetition and makes sentences flow more naturally. Third part of speech is verbs. So verbs show action, occurrence, or a state of being. Some examples of verbs are is, was, love, writes, kicked, will be dining, and might have thought. One of the most famous sentences in philosophy is I think, therefore I am. And in that sentence, think and am are verbs. Another sentence is if I've seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. So that one, in that sentence, have seen and is are the verbs. So without verbs, sentences really have no movement. So they're very important part of speech. So an adjective essentially modifies a noun or pronoun by adding description. So some examples of adjectives are blue, ancient, famous, few, unique, hotter, and 5. So one example of where we can see adjectives being used is Thomas Hobbes describing life as, we can see it's solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. So those are all things that describe life, which is a noun. And then another one is John Milton's sentence that says, I cannot praise a fugitive and cloistered virtue, unexercised and unbreathed, that never sallies out and sees her adversary. So in that sentence, fugitive and cloistered describe virtue. Unexercised and unbreathed also describes virtue. And then those are all adjectives because they're describing a noun. And they really shape how we kind of imagine what nouns represent. So an adverb modifies a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. And they often answer how, when, where, or to what extent. So some examples are well, often, soon, rather, or awkwardly. And typically they do, well, not typically, but sometimes they end in ly. But again, not always. So in a sentence by Ben Jonson, he says, to speak and to speak well are two things. So well there modifies speak, so it's an adverb. And then melancholy and despair, though often, do not always concur. So in that sentence, often and always are the adverbs. Adverbs you can think of as refining the meaning of something, which can be done subtly or dramatically. So a preposition is a transitional word that leads into a modifying phrase and typically shows a relationship, so often of place, time, or direction. And some examples include in, under, of, with, despite, to, inside. And there's more on the slide as well. And one sentence is, in the country of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So in that sentence, in and of are the two prepositions. They really situate kind of the nouns in space and time and also logic. So in our second example, we have all places, all airs make unto me one country. I'm in England, everywhere, and under any meridian. So in that sentence, all, unto, in, and under are the prepositions. Conjunctions link words, phrases, or clauses. There are two main types of conjunctions, which is coordinating conjunctions, which is for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. And those can be representing using the acronym fanboys. And there's also subordinating conjunctions, which basically are because, if, when, since, although. And one sentence where we can see them in use is Machiavelli's sentence, which he argues, since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. And in that sentence, since and if are the two conjunctions. Articles basically work with a noun to show how specific or general it is. So in English, we have 4 types of articles, and that's definite, which is the, indefinite, which is a or an, partitive, which is some, and negative or negative, which is no. And one example is John Donne writing that no man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. And in that sentence, no is a negative article. A, the, those are all articles as well. And then finally, we have interjections. So interjections basically express emotion or reaction. Some examples are oh, oops, darn, and ahem. So they're typically common in informal speeches and typically stand out from the sentence structure. So for example, we have, oops, I dropped your 3-story tall carrot cake. Darn it. And in that sentence, oops and darn it are the two interjections. And you can see that they kind of typically stand apart from the sentence as well. So now let's practice identifying what each word functions as in these two sentences. So we have, after midnight, the exhausted barista quietly renamed the burnt croissant a creative choice. And you guys can pause the video here and kind of look at each word and identify for yourself. Okay, so for the first sentence, we look at after. So after is a preposition, right? It leads into that prepositional phrase. Midnight is a noun. Quietly, we can see it ends in ly, so it's an adverb, and it also modifies renamed. Burnt is an adjective, right? It describes a croissant. Renamed is a verb. It's an action that someone's doing. Creative is an adjective. It's describing choice, and choice is a noun. Okay, now let's try our second sentence, which is, my phone aggressively insisted that 2:47 a.m. was a perfect time to update itself. So I'm going to point out a few things. So phone is obviously a noun. Aggressively is an adverb. Insisted is a verb. That is a subordinated conjunction. 2:47 a.m. is a noun, right? It's very specific. Perfect is an adjective. To update is a verb, but it's in an infinitive form. So whenever you have to and then a verb, it's infinitive. So now it's your turn. Practice makes perfect, as usual. So there are practice prompts available on the worksheet on our website. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video series.